Welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We have a really compelling stack of research in front of us today. It deals with the brain's its most extreme form of self-protection.
It's a fascinating look, really, into the cognitive architecture of survival.
Yeah, and we're basically talking about whether your mind, under extreme duress, can literally swap out your primary identity.
For a temporary, highly specialized operative.
Yeah, and the sources we have, pulled from psychological studies on, trauma and high-stress situations, they seem to suggest the answer is yes. A qualified but definite yes.
It is.
So I want you to consider this idea, just for a moment, right at the start. What if, inside your head, there's a second version of you,
Mm.
a hidden self, designed purely for a crisis? According to the research, this concept has a name. It's called the state-dependent self, or SDS.
And that's our mission for this deep dive, really. To unpack the evidence, the neurological and behavioral evidence surrounding this SDS. We want to understand how the brain constructs what some of the original Arabic research called a Tibo-Ihe,
Which means?
an alternative version,
Mm.
an alternative version of the self that only shows up during moments of shock or, extreme pressure.
Right, and when people hear alternative personality, I think their minds immediately jump to clinical disorders. So let's set the record straight right away. Is this a pathology or is this a natural function?
That is absolutely crucial to clarify. The sources are very clear on this. They define it strictly as a psychological defense mechanism.
A defense mechanism.
Yes, it's a temporary functional state. It's not a chronic, debilitating disorder. You should think of it less like a malfunction and more like, I don't know, a brilliant piece of system engineering.
Okay, so if the primary self, the you, that, gets overwhelmed, this secondary self just steps in, what's
Ah.
the fundamental difference in their purpose?
Well, the primary self it's complex. It feels, it rationalizes, it's constantly weighing consequences.
It has moral constraints.
Exactly. Moral constraints. But the SDS, it's purely survival driven.
100%.
It's a stripped down, highly efficient, and temporary version of you that the brain activates to manage a situation that the conscious, complex self simply cannot handle.
It doesn't have the bandwidth.
It doesn't. So the SDS is like the brain's ultimate contingency plan for an existential threat.
Okay, let's dig into the how then. If it is a defense mechanism, that implies a fundamental shift in how your brain is processing things. How does the brain actually build this new me in the middle of a crisis? How does it separate it from the fearful, overwhelmed you?
The mechanism is, well, it's elegant, but also kind of terrifyingly simple. It's dissociation through detachment.
Detachment.
Yes. To shield the individual from the psychological damage of that overwhelming stress or trauma, the brain basically initiates a cognitive separation.
And what exactly is being separated? We hear this phrase, detaching emotions, a lot. Is it really that simple?
It's a bit more complex than just muting your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Physiologically, when the threat is just too great, you get this massive flood of stress hormones, right? Cortisol, adrenaline.
The fight or flight response.
Right. But it doesn't just increase your heart rate. It also temporarily dampens the activity of the higher cortical functions, specifically the prefrontal cortex.
Which is responsible for what?
Executive functions, complex moral reasoning, planning for the future.
The part that makes us uniquely human, essentially.
Precisely. So by throttling the prefrontal cortex, the brain is effectively handing control over to the limbic system,
The primal survival center.
the primal brain. So the SDS isn't really built so much as it's what emerges when that rational, fearful, complex identity is temporarily switched off. It's the functional architecture left behind.
Wow.
And this detachment walls off all the sensory and emotional inputs that would normally cause you to freeze up or panic, allowing for just pure pragmatic reaction.
But doesn't that carry a huge risk? I mean, if you're suddenly cold and purely calculated, wouldn't you miss critical human cues? Or contextual things you might need for survival? Sometimes survival requires cooperation.
That's a critical question. And the sources suggest the SDS is really designed for immediate, often physical, direct action threats. The kind of threats where hesitation is fatal.
So not a long-term strategic crisis.
Exactly. In those highly nuanced social situations, this hyperpragmatism could actually be a huge disadvantage. But in a scenario of immediate physical danger, like a sudden car crash or a natural disaster, the ruthless efficiency of the SDS is, statistically, far more effective than the moral paralysis of the primary self.
The brain is sacrificing complexity for speed.
For speed and effectiveness, yes.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so this detachment, it leads to a radically different operational mode. How do we even know the SDS has taken over? What are the observable shifts the researchers found? It can't just be an internal feeling of distance.
No, absolutely not. The changes are externally profound. And this is what separates SDS from just, say, simple anxiety or shock.
Right.
We're talking about fundamental behavioral alterations. One of the most common shifts noted in the literature involves voice, your tone and inflection.
Your voice changes. How? Why?
The voice often becomes clearer, lower-pitched, and it carries this undeniable command presence.
Huh.
So if the primary person is typically soft-spoken or anxious, the SDS voice might be loud, concise, and just completely devoid of hesitation. It's the sound of someone who knows exactly what to do and has zero time for an argument.
It's signaling to others, and probably to your own body, that a capable manager is now in charge.
You've got it. That's a huge part of it. And even more critically, we see shifts in decision-making and cognition.
Okay.
So where the primary self might hesitate, weighing compassion or personal risk, the SDS version is purely goal-oriented. Its decisions are based solely on an immediate survival calculus.
So, if escaping means abandoning, say, non-essential things or even people, the SDS will make that call without emotional processing.
Without a second thought.
Yeah.
If the goal is get out of the burning building, everything else is just irrelevant noise.
Right.
The sources really emphasize a total change of the fundamental way of thinking. That India said again. The SDS thinks linearly, functionally. It doesn't use the emotional shortcuts or biases that your primary self does.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Imagine a high-stakes crisis, like a flash flood. The primary self might panic, try to save sentimental items, worry about consequences. The SDS will instantly calculate the fastest path to high ground. It will select only the necessary actions for getting there. It is machine-like in its focus.
That really drives home this idea of the brain just switching operational modes entirely, from an emotional, layered consciousness to pure, streamlined survival programming. It's an astonishing capacity.
It really is.
And then, once the threat is gone, this ruthless, efficient version just vanishes. And the primary self returns, often with, what, memory gaps about what happened.
Yes, often. The primary self reasserts control as the neurochemicals in the brain return to equilibrium. And the trauma is often sealed off through amnesia or significant dissociation.
Which is part of the defense mechanism itself.
Exactly. The trauma is still there, but the specific details of what the SDS did are frequently lost to conscious memory. The crisis manager clocks out.
But this is where the story gets profoundly compelling and, frankly, a little unnerving for me. The research confirms that the brain, being the ultimate data manager, doesn't just discard the survival blueprint, it stores it.
It's an internal archive of successful crisis management. Think of it like a specialized, highly efficient piece of software that was downloaded, executed perfectly, and then compressed and stored away.
Wow.
The brain files away this unique set of behavioral parameters, that specific voice tone, the ruthless decision matrix, the detached cognitive profile, and it tags it to the original threat conditions. It basically says, okay, we know this works.
So we're carrying this second me, this optimized survival blueprint, just dormant inside us. What brings it back online? Is it just general stress?
No, and that's where the specificity is so fascinating. It's not just generalized stress. The brain will reactivate this stored self only if the individual is exposed to the exact same threat or, more commonly, the precise sensory constellation of the original trauma.
Sensory constellation, what does that mean?
It means the combination of sensory inputs. So if the original threat involves, say, the smell of burning rubber, a certain pattern of flashing lights, and a specific decibel level of shouting,
Okay.
re-encountering that precise combination of sights, sounds, maybe even temperature, years later, can bypass the conscious mind and instantaneously bring that archived SDS back online.
It's a trigger.
A very specific trigger response loop designed to save time. It eliminates the need for the primary self to panic and then detach. The brain just skips straight to the solution that worked before.
That means we might be carrying this incredibly powerful, capable self that's ready to deploy, and we are completely unaware of its existence until the highly specialized lock is opened by the perfect key.
It really changes how you think about self-identity, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
And this leads directly to what might be the most challenging insight from all of these sources. If the brain is archiving a highly affected version of you, how does it decide which personality traits to prioritize?
Does it care if the self it activates is truly you? Your moral identity, your conscious preferences?
I think you know the answer.
Yeah.
It's brutally pragmatic.
Yeah.
It is. This is the ultimate test of the brain's priority structure. In its effort to save you, the brain is absolutely non-consultative. It is not a democracy.
It doesn't hold a meeting with your primary identity about which version of you should survive.
Not at all. It's just cold efficiency winning out. The distinction is defined so sharply in the research. The brain chooses the personality that can save you, not the one that resembles you. So that's the critical separation.
It is. So if your primary identity is defined by compassion, a fear of conflict, indecisiveness, but the state-dependent self that got you out of the first crisis was aggressive, emotionally sterile, and ruthless.
That latter version is the one that gets archived and redeployed.
That's the word.
So the very qualities we might actively dislike or try to suppress in ourselves, aggression, coldness, a lack of empathy, self-prioritization, those could be the building blocks of our most capable, survival-focused self. That is a profound thought.
It implies that the most functional, the most capable personality living inside us without our awareness might be the very one that is the psychological antithesis of our moral identity. Yeah.
It forces you to confront the fact that for the brain, survival is the only imperative. If being a bad guy for 3 minutes saves your life, the brain is more than happy to deploy that persona and then file it away until next time.
Wow. That gives a whole new meaning to the phrase knowing yourself.
It really does.
Okay, let's try to bring this incredibly powerful deep dive to a close with a quick summary of the state-dependent self.
Right, so we've established that the SDS is a temporary, highly specialized defense mechanism. It's activated by an overwhelming threat through the detachment of high-level consciousness.
And this results in real, observable, functional shifts in behavior. Everything from voice tone to ruthless, logical decision-making.
Exactly.
And for me, the most fascinating takeaway is that this version is archived. It's selected purely for its survival utility, and it's ready to be reactivated without your conscious consent if the precise sensory conditions of the original trauma reappear.
It's the ultimate psychological insurance policy.
Yeah, where the insurer has chosen the identity of the agent based purely on effectiveness, not on whether you like them.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, about the depth of your own resilience. If the brain archives a capable self designed purely for survival, and that self is chosen specifically because it doesn't resemble your normal consciousness, what does that imply about the latent, untapped power that's residing within your own mind?
It suggests there is a potent force, one that's detached from fear and designed for immediate, efficient action, just waiting for a trigger. It really begs the question, what capabilities does your mind reserve for the absolute worst-case scenario? And what does the version of you that only survives? What does that version even look like?
The state-dependent self highlights the fact that the architecture of survival may require an identity that is, in the end, completely unrecognizable to the self you know every day. And that's a powerful piece of psychological knowledge to carry forward.
We hope this deep dive into the hidden architectures of the state-dependent self has given you some truly profound food for thought.